Hi there, my name's Nick Sparrow. I'm the Medical Director of the ATACC Group Canada. I'm also an EMS and ER physician. I'm also a dad with 6 kids, and I wanted to kind of put this, it's kind of like a webinar, just a chat really about emotional resilience, things that I've found useful, challenges that I've had. And my heart in this talk is to encourage those who are frontline responding and just help them with some of the challenges that I've had to walk through. Do I have all the answers? No. Do I have all the data? No. Am I a clinical psychologist? No. But I've attended about 1,000 immediate threat to life 911 calls as an EMS physician, and I've been in medicine a number of years, qualified back in 2001, so that's 22 years. And so I feel like I can bring some things to the table. I hope that in former and latter discussion groups, there can be information posted that other people have found interesting. And this is really to help people who may be struggling through challenges with calls or challenges with life a little bit, because actually that is real life. And that's why I wanted to put this together. So I hope this is useful. Please reach out if you have questions, comments, and I'll sort of cover a little bit at the end as well. I'm doing this in one take, so it's all going to be live. If there's errors or whatever, this is just how it's going to be today. So I'm having fun with my slides already, which is off to a great start. But the topics I really want to cover is EMS life-changing realizations, things that have sort of really impacted me, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, about running the race, insights to emotional awareness. Like, you don't get the prize for not getting over the finish line. You have to, in order to win the race or complete the race, you have to get to the finish line. And that is the big challenge in life, isn't it? Getting to the finish line and not quitting on the way. And then a few kind of little personal hacks, tips and tricks. I'd love to hear your tips and tricks because no doubt it's going to help me and many other people in this journey together. Let me just, I just got to do one thing because my slides are mucking up. Okay. So I want to ask the question, who is EMS? Who are the emergency medical services? You may not be in the medical services bit. You may be part of emergency services. And I think, sometimes we can go through our training. We get to the end of our training and then we're told, yes, you're a doctor, you're a paramedic, you're now a police officer, and you're now a firefighter, first responder. And actually, sometimes that reality of actually the training that we've done and the things that we have put our time and effort to, suddenly we're now that person. And there comes a period where you actually have to own that title and embrace it and become it. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but I remember having just done like 6 years of medical school and suddenly now being told, yes, you're a doctor and now you need to get out there. And there was a certain owning of that role. And I think just as when, I then started moving towards emergency medicine, now you're an emergency physician. You've passed the special competency exams and now you're an emergency physician. And now you need to take that identity on. And I think it's kind of an important, for me anyway, it was an important penny drop that actually, yes, this is who I am when I go to work. It's not necessarily who I am when I always come home, but the two things blend together in reality. There are always going to be motives of why you do what you do. And for me, I probably didn't realize this motive till maybe about 10 years ago. My little sister, age 2, managed to walk away, get out of her stroller or a push chair, as we call it in the UK. And we were at a Red Cross garden party. And my sister managed to find a pond and was she was found actually face down in a pond by my mum's best friend, a lady called Pat. There was like screams because she was in cardiac arrest. Anyway, she was pulled out of the pond, and this gentleman, Bob Griffin, started resuscitation. He was a first aid Red Cross provider, and actually resuscitated my sister. Paramedics were then called. We were in a small town, 20 minutes from the nearest hospital. Police attended. They gave police escort to the hospital whilst they were sort of resuscitating her and actually pumping out tons of pond water from her lungs. Not pumping out, but like from the CPR. And she survived with no neurological deficits at all. And I think for me, I was like, if a Red Cross first aider in their free time can volunteer and save the life of a child, then, and this is self-reflective, me as a physician can learn to do the same thing in the field and help other patients. And apply that to for you if you're a police officer, for you if maybe you're military, maybe if you're close protection. There's always reasons why we do what we do, and sometimes those reasons actually can be very, very blurred. My mum happened to be a nurse. My grandfather was a doctor, so medicine has run in the family. And my grandmother drove ambulances, so I don't think she was actually a paramedic. She did some paramedic training, but she was primarily actually a driver for ambulances in the RAF, bringing pilots in and people from the airfields. I think another important kind of piece to remember in all the jobs that we do is this is about service. This is about service to the community. And I think when egos, and I've said this before, if you've been to lectures or teaching, the ATACC group ethos is working as a team. Emergency services should interface with one another. We should be kind and collegial to one another and not fighting each other, because actually it is about service of the public. And I think, unfortunately, when egos and territory and turf come in, that is where the fight's around. And I'm going to be maybe a little bit abrasive here. A lot of it comes out of selfishness and not actually patient-focused care. And I think that is just an important thing to remember, that it is about service. You're a servant. You're being sometimes paid or not paid for what you do, but you're serving the public and serving your country as a result of the work that we do. And I think it's important to be able to run the race. Like, we need to get to the finish line. As I said at the beginning, you don't get a prize for not getting over the line. You may get a well done, from the spectators for trying, but you don't win the prize. And winning the prize is an important piece. And I'm talking metaphorically here. I think one thing to understand is our performance and our stress levels are linked. Do I have the paper that can quote this? No, I'm sure you can go and look on Wikipedia. But, when you get to a certain point of stress, it starts pushing people into exhaustion and ultimately breaking down. And we've all heard about burnout, especially with COVID. And I think sometimes this performance curve can happen quite quickly. Sometimes it can be years. And I think a lot of the time internally, we have the answers, like, I need to cut down on what I'm doing. I need to cut back. Yet we keep going. And it's usually sort of the donkey and the carrot. We're the donkey and the carrot is the money. And sometimes actually we don't realize that if we don't listen to ourselves, actually, the donkey can't walk. And interestingly, the carrot remains the same, intangible grab away from the donkey all the time, whether it's walking, running, you name it. So it's kind of like trying to chase the end of the rainbow. It's really difficult to get to the end of it. I think also having self-awareness about your energy levels and your personal body, like circadian rhythm, if you want to put a proper name on it, or just how your body functions, is really important. For me, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm filming this. Why? Because I just like the mornings. I can get up, I've got energy. If you said, could you do this at like 6 or 7? I feel like an old man, like I just want to go to bed. And so energy spikes at different times in the day. And just to be aware of where you are in your own energy, because it can actually impact like how you approach things, how you potentially are mentally as well. So it's just basically having good knowledge of yourself. And sometimes that takes time. Sometimes it requires a little bit of self-revelation, like someone putting something up in front of you and saying, hey, have you thought about this? And this is kind of exactly what I'm talking about. I remember going to a lecture that was given by a police officer. It was actually in Nelson, and he had suffered with PTSD and was talking about the walk of PTSD. And he talked about, I think he talked about his kind of magic armchair. So he would go to work, he would come home from a busy day, and he would just sort of plonk in the armchair and sort of seemingly check out. And it's quite interesting. If you think about it, for, let's take first responders, and myself, I'm a first responder, so I'm like having a normal day. In fact, just the other day, I was sitting on the couch, drinking a coffee, listening to a bit of music. Suddenly, phone goes. Look at the phone. It's dispatch. I know it's going to be something bad. That's what I train for. That's what I'm ready for. And so, boom, I'm now on. Adrenaline levels start going. My mind starts thinking about, talking with the dispatcher, finding out the details of the call. And now my mind's already ripping on like what I need to be thinking about and what I need to be doing and getting my head in the game. And with that comes a huge adrenaline rush. I go from sitting on the couch, really relaxed, listening to music, drinking coffee, to suddenly high adrenaline. And with that comes some excitement. By definition, that is what adrenaline creates. Your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, your pupils dilate, and you get a surge of energy. And I think to understand that and then realize, well, actually, my energy peaks, I've treated the patient, we've got them safely to wherever they are, or maybe that's not going to be the outcome. Maybe it's actually the patient didn't survive. And now I've got to go home. I've got to, for me, I've got to do a truck check. I've got to sort out the equipment. I've got to finish paperwork, etc. Plus also then interface with my family. And I say interface, like I love my family, but like that, even that terminology is slightly strange. I mean, how many people interface with their family? I've got to have a conversation with my family. I've got to re-engage back into family life where I want to be on the couch listening to music. I want to be present with my kids. I don't want to be in this hard sort of fight for humanity and life, which is actually what I've signed up for. So there is actually, for me, a bit of an interface. Like I have to come in and try as sometimes as hard as I can not to bring that outside stress inside. But if you don't really understand that interface, home can, after the adrenaline dump, you can feel sort of washed out, and sometimes like you can't even manage conversations about what you want for dinner. You just don't want to make any more decisions. And so you go from this high adrenaline state to a sort of nothing when you get home. So work becomes linked with a high adrenaline state, and home becomes linked with a nothing emotion. And if you keep doing that on a regular basis, what does it reinforce? Work is wonderful, home is not, which is so untrue. And for me, it really did unlock a key, this one bit of information, because I went, actually, that's not true. Not that I was really thinking that, but I was struggling with that interface. And to have that pointed out and someone say, look, that is not true. actually, this is what is happening to you, I was like, right, I get it. For me, I become quite, after a very, very big call, and some of this has actually really changed within the last few months as well, which I'll try and share as I go through if I can remember. But actually getting, sometimes with the really, really intense calls, I'm only going to immediate threat to life calls, like people trapped in motor vehicle accidents, shootings, seizure calls, unconscious, etc. Sometimes I'll come home, and because the call has been so intense, and usually it's sort of before meal times, after meal times, and I have 6 kids and a dog that likes to bark sometimes, I will sit at the table and I will really struggle with like noise, and I become quite noise sensitive, and almost have to like try and phase some of it out. And sometimes I have to say to my kids, look, can you stop shouting? On a few occasions, I actually have to remove myself from the kitchen, like from the dinner table, because actually I can't manage that noise. And is that okay? I think, yes, it is okay, actually. And I'll try and sort of explain why going forward. But your family don't need to have you in a hurt state sitting at the table. And sometimes actually it is better to just say, hi guys, I really appreciate you, I really love you, but I need to take a little bit of time out. So if I don't take some time out, I'm going to struggle a bit, and I'm just having a bit of a tough time after one of these calls. Hope you don't mind, and I'm really looking forward to the next great meal. And that is a better way of managing it. And to just decompress. Maybe it's actually going for a walk. Maybe it's coming in if you can and going for a run. Maybe sometimes it's actually still being there, but just saying, look, I'm having a little bit of a challenging time. If you've got kids, there's no reason why they should understand that. And there's no reason why you should actually make them understand it. And hopefully I'll kind of speak to this a little bit going forward. You know, sometimes the escape for me might be turning on my phone and watching some YouTube videos, Britain's Got Talent, or, you know, American Idol, whatever it is that you like watching, Cars, who knows. I just kind of like zoning out and watching people on talent shows. I don't know why, but it kind of takes my mind out of the game. I think, though, you have to be a little bit aware of like how you're decompressing, because usually it's quite individualistic. It can exclude other people within your family that can create kind of hurts. I think at times it is a healthy option, but you just have to be aware, oh, okay, I'm kind of doing this just to give myself a bit of relief. And I think in that context with insight, I think it's okay, but you just have to check yourself from time to time. And definitely this is like one way I potentially, you know, check out at times. I'm just like, I just need to sit on my phone for a bit and just maybe it's playing video games. I don't know. And I think, you know, this is what I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think reactions like this are normal. Having, you know, spoken to many of my colleagues, had a conversation with someone the other day who had a really busy shift at work, and my colleague was saying exactly the same things. You know, like I go home and sometimes I just can't make a decision about what I want to have for dinner, and you know, my spouse doesn't understand me or understand my day. And it's kind of like, well, actually, that's kind of good sometimes, because unless they've walked in your shoes, they're not going to understand that. And I think reactions like this are totally normal. I think, having reflected over the years, some of these big reactions come from what I would call halo events, high acuity, low occurrence events, where it's not. I always kind of make jokes about grandmas. Basically, I love my grandma. She's no longer alive, but I still love my grandma. And so I sometimes make little jokes about grandma, but it's not like the call where you go and it's a grandma with a twisted ankle. We're talking about very, very different events. And, you know, this Halo guy, I think he looks pretty cool actually, is suited and booted for what he's having to do. And, you know, explosions, fire, etc. And often these are quite similar to the halo events. You think about the Bataclan terrorist attack where multiple patients lost their lives. It was really challenging for the emergency services. It's these kind of events that have effects on patients. Sorry, not on patients. My dog actually is out in the garden, so I can hear her whining outside the door. And this is real life. But I'm just going to carry on. So with like the Bataclan, there's a very interesting. I think it was with the Bataclan. It may have actually been there was another terrorist attack where a number of people got shot in a restaurant. There was actually an EMS physician who spoke about triaging patients and some of the things that really affected him. Obviously, these big events often trigger huge emotional responses in first responders, and it should do, because these are horrific events. The question is, how do you prepare for these, and how do you debrief from these, and how do you go forward living your life and being able to continue to do your job? And that's some really big challenges, and I don't have all the answers to it. I have a few maybe pieces of information that might help you. But these halo events are things like pediatric calls, hangings, drownings, critical trauma calls, major incidents. Sometimes being rural or remote calls, you're on your own. If you're a paramedic crew, it may be that it's a medical call that you're going to. You may or may not have fire backing up, or it may be you're going to what you think is a minor call and it becomes a major call. It may be that you're a firefighter and you get dispatched to something and now it becomes a major medical call. And for a period of time, or for a long period of time, you're actually on your own. And I think, resource challenges, you're waiting maybe 20, 30 minutes for resources to arrive, or they're incidents that actually happen on scene, operational incidents that are occurring. And I think these halo events, personally speaking, are the ones that can be most challenging. Why? Because sometimes we just cannot prepare for them, or we have no idea that we may be put into a situation like this and then suddenly have to deal with it. We then deal with it, then we come home into this coffee on the couch, music, etc. And just like, how do you even relate those things? And the answer is not very easily. And I think sometimes that can build in struggle over time. I'm just going to mention this, I still remember actually going back many, many years ago and doing the ATACC course. This is not a plug for the ATACC course, but I suppose in a way, this is my personal belief. I way before I ever became involved with the ATACC group, I went to the ATACC course. And that course prepared me for so many emergencies that I have attended. And I think one in particular, a hanging that I responded to, I was actually first on scene. But I still remember to this day training for a hanging with the ATACC group. And that was in their ATACC course. And I actually do believe that me going to that call did help me when I was suddenly on scene in the midst of what I would say would be a halo event for me. And that brought a sense of, okay, I know about this topic, I've actually practiced this topic, and this is what I need to do. And I think this kind of goes back to the training and why I'm wanting to tell you these things, and why I've spent so much of my life involved with education, because I think it does make a difference. I think it makes a difference for people who are actually responding to have thought about some of these issues, learned from other people who have gone ahead of them. We're always learning from other people. I think after calls, often this is the emotional response. I've had days, and maybe I'm going to get told off for being too transparent. To be honest, I don't actually don't really care because I'm just a human being. I have a job, I have a role. But I've had times where I've, come back from calls and I've sat in front of my laptop and I've been like this. I've just been like, this is really tough. This has really kicked my butt. And I've had a couple of times where I've just burst into tears in the kitchen. I rarely do it, but sometimes it just becomes too much. And, I would definitely recommend giving your loved one a huge hug. I remember one time and actually it wasn't too long ago, I just burst into tears. My wife just grabbed me, gave me this huge hug. And actually after it, boy, did I feel so much better. And it's just simple things like that can make a really big difference for people. In fact, sometimes I would dare to say it can even save someone's life. And maybe one day I'll talk more about a story related to that. But don't underestimate the power of compassion and just being there for someone in the midst of struggles. I don't know who these people will know who they are, but one call I had a bit of a rough ride, and it was more I was actually having a rough time, and just sort of had a conversation with these people as we were coming back from a call, and just sort of said, hey, I've had a bad week, burst into tears, and interestingly, other people had the same kind of situations, and I think it's okay. Like, this is normal. How could we expect that we would not be affected by some of the sad stuff that we see? But I don't think it should deter us from doing it. And there are lots of helps out there that can help us get through it. By doing this talk on emotional resilience, my heart is to build you up, build me up, so that we can keep doing this work that deep in our hearts we know we're called to do. And my hope is that it's not stirring things in you that make you feel like you can't do this, because that would not be the right thing. And if you feel like through this you are struggling, then reach out to people that can help you. Maybe it's a counselor, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a work colleague. Because if you don't, then maybe this is going to be something that might potentially get worse over the fullness of time. And then you get to a point where you're just like, I really feel like I'm done. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes we do get to a point where there is a hard line, but we know it and it's our choice. What isn't nice is where that choice is sometimes made for us. And I think, I'm not a trained psychologist, but I've been involved with treating patients for many years, and reactions like this are normal. Like we see it on a regular basis through the emergency department, people having emotional crises, situational crises, who are struggling with big events, and really as first responders, emergency service providers, military, special operations, etc. We're involved in some very unique experiences and challenges. I think debriefing halo calls, halo events can be exceptionally useful. And I'll tell you why. I think, one, it can be exceptionally useful for the individual going, so like for myself, but it also can be exceptionally useful for someone else. And this is where the service bit comes. Sometimes we go, oh, I don't want to go to that debrief because I don't think I'm going to get anything out of it. That's the kind of ego, self-centered, self-talking. But when it's like, I think I really need to go to this. Why? Because it's my brothers and sisters in the emergency services and I want to be there to support them. It may be that your one bit of information, just like the police officer who unlocked kind of the magic chair coming in and just sitting in it and after a big call, you might have that bit of information that unlocks something for someone else. And so I remember one event I'd been to, actually a motor vehicle incident, very, very tragic. And I I knew that when I got back from that call that I was not doing okay. And I said to my wife, I don't feel like I'm doing very good, but I couldn't access actually any emotion whatsoever. And it was only a couple of days later, and this is one of the kind of 2 episodes that kind of broken down. I just burst into tears in the kitchen, and I was just like, this is just a lot to have seen and gone through and tried to help with. And I remember a paramedic colleague phoned me, and she said, hey, there's a debrief at one of the fire halls. Do you want to come? I was like, sure, I'll come. I was kind of a little bit reticent about going. Anyway, it was a huge debrief. I'm so thankful for that fire department for doing it. And I went in with metaphorically what was a huge backpack of weight from that call. And I shared a little bit of my experience of that call. I think I got a bit emotional. Did I care? No. Why? Because I'm with friends and family of the emergency services. And I can honestly say 80% of the burden that I walked in on that debrief fell off my back as I walked out. And I am so thankful that I went to it, because that one debrief was so important for me. I'm not sure anyone else would have maybe even realized that. But I needed to go to that to actually be able to move on to the next job and help at the next call. And up until that point, I'd really had like how could I put this correctly? Maybe on a sort of an unhealthy view of debrief, like this is just, why are we doing this? But actually for the key halo events where there's an issue, I would say, there's an importance not to call a debrief for every big call, because it becomes then overwhelming. But for those ones where there's people being rocked by it, I think it really is very useful. I think reactions like this are normal. I hope they are, otherwise I'm not normal. But you could say, yes, you're not normal, and that's okay. But I think the kind of baggage falling off when we do things like this is a normal reaction. Being able to share these experiences and getting it off our back is a really important and healthy thing to do. Sorry, I've just gone back to that original slide. Your friends are really important pieces of the puzzle as well. Things that you walk through together. This is a training exercise we went down to in San Diego. Just walking alongside your friends is an important piece. Some of the personal hacks that I've picked up, one would be kind of technology, your phone. This is a picture of Maui Beach. I kind of changed my phone around a little bit. My opening picture is something that inspires me. For a while, it was Maui Beach. Now I've got a Roman centurion as my front to remind me, keep fighting, Nick. Keep fighting the centurions. They were known for being courageous, and they were known for their scars on their face, not their scars on their back, because they hadn't run in battle. They'd faced it and walked through it. And sometimes I need a reminder each day that sometimes it is a bit of a fight, and to be in the fight is okay. And so that's kind of what I've done. I've taken all my email alerts off my front screen. I've taken all my, I took a lot of my social media apps off. Mainly, I think because of that, we talked about you come in from a call and you're getting bombarded with different things. It can be the same when you turn your phone on. And I don't think phones were really meant to be that way, of just feeling bombarded. But that actually sometimes is what we kind of feel like. And certainly, you go on a big call, there's a lot of debriefing, there's a lot of texting, there's a lot of reaching out to different people about various different things. And that can add its sense of overwhelming just emotion to an event. I think teamwork Really, really important. If your teams are all working together, your emergency services are working together to support each other and not fight each other, I think it's a really key piece. If there is division, fraction, issues, it just makes it that much harder for that service who's struggling. I think physical fitness is an important one. I've still not quite fully mastered it. I sort of go through periods of like, yes, I'm going to get on the treadmill, I'm going to run, I'm going to do this and that, and then get sort of an injury and then have to stop for a few weeks. And then I'm like, oh my goodness me, how can I do this again? But I think physical fitness, we know that exercising, I think it's like 3 to 5 times a week is as good as taking an antidepressant. We know that it helps release, body toxins, etc. I think fitness and fitness being a part of your training is actually a really important piece. And maybe should be incorporated into group training. So I'll kind of throw that out there. I think also critical skills training is really, really vital. We sort of had this saying, it's not our saying, but train hard, fight easy. Certainly as an EMS physician, I think most of you who know me know that I respond for a charity. It's called Kerpa. This is not a plug for the charity. This is just part of me and what I do. I respond out and assist as an EMS physician. But on a regular basis, we are training, drilling critical skills. This is Jason, who's a good friend of mine, and we drill critical skills. We have to do it actually every 3 months for the critical skills. But drilling regularly really helps it when you come to these big halo calls. And that's why we do it. And the train hard, fight easy is such a real thing. If you're constantly revisiting this, when you actually come to those calls, you're like, hey, I know about this. This is what we need to do. And it makes the call flow easier. And I think it gives us less baggage. It really does. That's not to say we're not going to struggle with calls, but it does give less baggage. As an emerged doc, because we drill this on a regular basis. I know a 5-year-old is going to be 20 kilograms. I know that, the size of IO that I'm going to put in. I know that I'm going to give 2 mils of 1 in 10,000 epi intraosseous in a cardiac arrest. I know that probably they're going to be in asystole flatline. And I know that we're going to be doing CPR every 2 minutes. We're going to be giving epi every 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm going to be doing a 2 to 15 rate for me as a physician, as an advanced provider. And just having that sort of drilled in the back of your head, I'm coming to a massive hemorrhage. Okay, direct pressure, more direct pressure. Can I do indirect pressure, like stop an artery somewhere else? Generally not. Tourniquet, or am I going to now go and use hemostatic dressings, or a combination of both? And so just having these little sort of algorithms that come out of training and practicing is a really, really important piece of actually preparing us, I think, for emotional wellness in the fullness of time. That's pretty much it. That's the one thing I did want to say, and I said I'd come back to this, about people having to understand some of the stuff that we go through. I was impacted by something I read. Does a child need to understand the sorrows of their father or mother? And I would say the answer is no. And I've told this story on a radio interview recently. I came in from a difficult call. I got in at about 10 o'clock at night, and it was a very stressful call. And my son, who should have been in bed at 9 o'clock, loves Pokemon, and ran down and came and saw me and was like, Dad, I've got to show you. Check out my Pokemon. And I just read this information, read this thing about, does a child need to understand their father's sorrow? And I would say maybe a couple of years ago, I may have said, hey, you should be in bed. Why aren't you in bed? Go get up and we'll talk in the morning, and maybe got a little bit cross about it. But I remember this thing rolling in my head and going, okay, I could choose to get really cross here because I've come in from a call that I'm stressed about. Instead, I was like, okay, my kid doesn't need to know about what I've just done. Why don't I embrace just a kid's innocence and excitement about a Pokemon? And sort of was showing these Pokemon, and for once I was like, wow, this is great. Thank you for showing me, and enjoyed some of the excitement that a kid was having about something that they had just traded at school, rather than coming home and being stuck in that fog of challenge, of stress. And it was a real turning point for me to be like, hey, it's okay other people don't understand what I've gone through, and neither should they. And I should actually celebrate the innocence of my own kids, their joy, their fun, and switch my mindset a little bit, because that is healthy, that is good. And it was a very, very interesting exercise. So anyway, that was that bit of information I wanted to share. And if at the end of this lecture you are struggling a bit, please reach out to someone. As I said, the aim of this lecture is not to, or webinar, or whatever you want to call it, this chat really, is not to give you heavy weights and burdens to carry around. If that is the case, then I've done something wrong. So please reach out. We have like the ATACC Canada community group, or if you're part of a fire service that's, we're providing medical direction for you, you'll probably have your own community group. Please reach out on that. We'll put some resources there on emotional wellness. There's helplines, which we'll put contact to, and I'll see if I can put a link at the end of this as well. And I would just encourage you to keep going. Winston Churchill, being from the UK, says never, never, never give up. In fact, my mum's got it on a little magnet on her fridge that I can sort of visually see even now. And, I would say we're not alone in this journey. Do I have a degree on this subject? No. But I do have experience and a personal journey in it as well. And I hope that some of this journey is going to help you, just like the police officer with his conversation helped me. And I really hope that there's an opportunity for you to be able to share some of those things as well through the community group. You'll see there's like real stories. There's something on emotional resilience. If you have like key topics, please place them there. And please do reach out to someone if you're really struggling. There is a lot of help out there, and sometimes it's actually just decompressing. Sometimes some of these things that we see. Keep going. Don't quit. Thank you. I hope this has been helpful for you.